Right. Ellie says you have it before, so.
I don't think so. Good.
You ready?
Call the Village of Johnsburg, July 16, 2024, regular meeting of the President Board of Trustees to order at 7 p.m. On the roll, Trustee Morse.
Here.
Trustee Hagan. Here. Trustee Clemson.
Here.
Trustee Foreman.
Here.
Trustee Letzker.
Here.
Show that Trustee Falk is not here tonight. Pledge allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Curry.
Tom Curry, 2017 Camden Court, Johnsburg. I just want to make sure everybody knew that the roof collapsed at the Jugger Dune. So, that's all.
Tom, was that just recently or?
I noticed it a couple days ago, 2 days ago. I don't remember exactly. Maybe Saturday.
We just saw it on the boat from same thing. I think of that, not this last storm, but the storm before that, I believe is when it hit them.
Okay. Sarah Hagan.
Sarah Hagan, 3910 Pitson Road, Johnsburg. I'm here on behalf of the Johnsburg Area Business Association. I just wanted to make everyone aware that the ramifications of the decisions made here do travel. I've been talking to people who own properties along the 31 corridor, and there is hesitation on development along the 31 corridor because of what has been discussed at the board level. So please do not cut off your nose to spite your face. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Have a motion to approve the omnibus agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Trustee Foreman, seconded by Trustee Letzker. Discussion on the motion. Anything anybody would like pulled? There being none, Trustee Morse. Aye. Trustee Hagan.
Aye.
Trustee Clemson. Aye. Trustee Foreman.
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Letzker. Motion carried. Okay, we're past that part, but we'll back up. Michael?
Okay, sorry.
Mr. Maritek.
Oh, well, I guess I just wanted to take a few minutes to maybe make a few comments concerning, I think, what you have been discussing concerning the business and the challenges that you're facing and he's facing in trying to come to an agreement. And the only comment that I have is I believe that the end in mind for what the village is trying to achieve with business growth and encouraging new businesses to come into the village, and what I think Jeff and what he's trying to do kind of are in alignment. I think your end in mind, both what the village is wanting and what he's trying to do, seems to be the same. So I guess my only thought would be to just maybe ask, is there an opportunity for maybe a solution that lets the village achieve what they're wanting to achieve, and that's have a business that our grandkids, by the way, who live here in Johnsburg are participating in the CrossFit little business that's there. They're enjoying that. Is there a way that we could arrive at a solution where that could happen, but yet protect what you're wanting to try to do long term with other businesses coming in. Is there a potential solution that will enable that to happen without putting the village at risk, and maybe something that maybe, Jeff could agree to that would protect you? Has that been discussed, or has it been, has that been considered, I guess, is what I'm asking. And maybe I can't even ask that, but that's kind of what I wanted to share today. I think your end and minds both are the same. I think what he's trying to do with the business is something that'd be positive. It's positive right now, but there seems to be some hesitancy to do some things here that may potentially put the village at risk long-term, but it doesn't seem to be something that should be that great. I mean, it would be a simple decision to enable this to happen. That's kind of all I wanted to really share.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Michael, do you want to do the appropriations hearing?
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Open it and close it, please.
Sure. At this time, we'll open up a public hearing on the village's fiscal year 2025 appropriation ordinance. This is not the budget. It sets forth a ceiling on the village's costs. This is preceded by a notice in the Northwest Herald. It's not a prediction of the amounts that the village will spend. Rather, it's an upper ceiling. We recommend that that ceiling be set sufficiently high to be careful, because it's very difficult to modify the appropriation ordinance. At this time, is there anyone from the public who wishes to provide comment regarding the same? Seeing none, I close the hearing at this time.
Motion to move and approve ordinance 24-25-03, making appropriations for general and corporate purposes for the village of Johnsburg for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2024 and ending April 30th, 2025. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Got a motion by
Second.
Trustee Morris and seconded by Trustee Foreman. Discussion on the motion. We went through the budget a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and everybody understands it, I think.
I had one question earlier about the construction project, that amount that we had appropriated for that. And Claudette clarified that for me, so that's the only thing I had.
Anybody else? With there being none, Trustee Morris? Aye. Trustee Hagan?
Aye.
Trustee Clemstein?
Aye.
Trustee Foreman?
Aye.
And Trustee Larson?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, first read, no action. Move to approve ordinance 24-25-05, amending chapter 12, nuisances of the Johnsburg Municipal Code, adding section 12.13, outdoor lighting and regulations. So this is first read, no action. So Trustee Morris, would you like to lead into that? And I'm sure maybe Assistant Administrator Lamontaglia.
Basically what we're doing is trying to make it safer, more security, energy conservation, reduce and eliminate light pollution. So basically, if you are living next to someone that has a light that's shining in your bedrooms, that's light pollution. So we're talking about shields, we're talking about redirecting lights, getting more energy efficient lighting for businesses. It has to be pointed down and shaded away from residential. Basically, it's stuff like that we're talking about. I mean, if you want to...
Yeah, so currently in the subdivision control ordinance, we have lighting mandates with the right-of-ways, the parkways, the trees, all that detail. We didn't have anything, there was a gap and that I found in the ordinances in regards to private property, the residential district, the multi-homes, and the impact from the surrounding businesses in regards to their establishment. So we still want to maintain lighting for security reasons. There are some timelines that we put in there for some commercial property just to keep the low light down. We're not trying to alleviate or make it dark, but we're just trying to have the impact to neighbors being neighborly, to where the foot candle doesn't spill over outside of their property. So illuminate your house, feel protected, I'm all about that. Just staying consistent by not being a nuisance, residential complaints, or all the infrastructure and growth on the business corridors impacting the residential neighborhoods. Just try to have something in place for harmony, and I'm sure we'll be revisiting this in the future for anything that we possibly overlook.
And, I mean, we've had great long discussions about this when we did the village hall, about spilling over in the neighborhood, the parking lot here. So they will not interfere with any of the neighbors of this residential community. And if you go out at night, everything sort of stays on the property, it doesn't shoot over, so.
Yeah, it works for developments. We just don't have, someone buys a new home and they want to be super secure, and they got their motion detected, strobe lights, flashers.
There's actually some pictures of it.
Yeah, there's a nice little detail, little drawing.
And you did a great job on it.
Vinny, somebody's shining a floodlight at your house, okay? And
That's basically what,
that's what we're trying to avoid.
I'll follow up with you.
Yeah.
Are we having concerns and complaints from?
We have a couple concerns and complaints, and I do foresee more concerns and complaints as sodium sulfur bulbs are now becoming LED, which are much more brighter. They carry a higher lume content, which has more spill, more foot candle that projects across. So your incandescent light switching to an LED, you can notice it in your house, an immediate difference. So the same thing applies to the exterior. We just want to put some kind of parameter set in place just to protect that.
So, be good. We have a situation, we live on a pond. I have two neighbors that are going back and forth with this very issue. Back porch is on, reflects across the pond, right into neighbor's bedroom window at night, back and forth. So what is the recourse here for a resident that has this issue?
Well, in this ordinance, towards the end, I put like an enactment date, right? And I put something in there about 2025, I think it's the very last sentence of that ordinance, of what day you believe that people have time to comply. So we can e-blast it, we can notify, we can put it on our website. Traffic, please correct this. I did not take into consideration reflection off the pond, so maybe that's something I have to revisit.
That hardly ever happens,
It's a great thing to
Vinny, where you
bring
don't
up.
consider everything.
I did it, right? Someone came at me with the lasers. I'm like, oh, let's just throw it in there, no lasers. I don't know who wants a light show out of their house, but hey, let's try.
Hey, I have my laser light show up at Christmas. Sometimes it gets away from me.
So there's a holiday exemption. I was corrected when I drafted it.
Right
There's a
around.
holiday exclusion in regards to, holiday lighting or festivities. Although I'm not a big fan of, multicolored lights and people changing them, or the skeleton that sits out on the lawn for
The whole year?
But, we don't have anything for lawn art at this current time. I'll work on that.
a lot of it might
I
even
I
just
think
be.
fine tuning this is a great idea. So
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, I think,
ordinance.
I'm sorry, Rita.
I'm done.
I had a couple of concerns just from a business perspective, like the 2 a.m. time limit, right? I know that we've had a couple of instances in our business where our building gets tagged, right? And so we have since, and this has been a number of years, we've since put in lights that are on all night, right? And obviously our property is larger, and I agree that it should not go beyond our property limits. But I would be, I would really like to not turn those lights off at night for issues of public safety. And I would like to get this in front of other businesses too in town, just to try and get their opinions, right? The same thing like we did with the sign ordinance, and just make sure that everybody feels they can comply with it as well. But, yeah, from a safety standpoint for businesses, I think that we just need to be cognizant of, they may have different requirements than like a residence would have, and how we can be.
Yeah, but we put in here 2 a.m. to reduce the lighting, not to turn it off.
Well, like I can't do that with my lights. Mine are on or off. I mean, they're on photocells, so they turn themselves on, turn themselves off, but they don't have.
But I think this is more affecting the shielding of it, so it doesn't spill over onto other property.
Right, that I agree. I agree with
And
that
then-
completely.
So if they are on all night but don't spill over, we have the same thing at the village hall here. These lights are on all night, but they don't spill over.
Right, yeah, I mean, I
If you go outside in the parking lot, they don't spill over to across the street where it's irritating to the residents. It was part of the process when we remodeled here, that we wanted to be very aware that we didn't want to affect them, building this in a residential neighborhood and keeping it in a residential neighborhood. Although most people from the old Sunnyside were, they wanted this in Sunnyside. They wanted it to be, stay here. So I think it's more of the spillover than the going on and off.
I agree.
I don't think the concern is about, you know, the security of your business. You gotta have it, the light's gotta be on. And, I mean, you're in a pretty unique spot because I think the spillover would only be on Chapel Hill roadside. There's nothing behind you, maybe a little bit to the river, but otherwise, I think, you know, I can't see it affecting you that much.
Right, again, it's more that time limit, right? If we stick to that time limit and say that they have to go off or be dimmed, that might, I want to get input from other businesses too, just to make sure that they
Well, I think the big
know it's coming.
The big thing would be, I believe, is the spillover.
Yeah, and I agree with
think that's
that.
what they're trying to do.
Especially businesses that abut residential areas or gas stations, whatever the case may be, right? Where they're typically are going to have their lights on all night.
Josh, doesn't Heman and the gas station, they have theirs on dusk to dawn, don't they?
I don't think there's a big spillover from it, though, is there?
No, and again, I mean, it's still unique situations, right? Where Joe's property has a nice cover with those trees, so he's close to that residential area, but his light doesn't really spill over. And again, if we can say that he can have the lights on, but just not go across his property line, I think everybody will be okay with that.
I know a guy that's building real near there, and he's gonna bitch like hell if that spills over. Not even an issue.
So, is there a reason we picked 2 a.m.? Is that just because that's 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. for parking ordinances?
I think we took 2 a.m. because the liquor license go to 2 a.m. every night.
That's what I was wondering if you go to
Every
2
night, we changed it where it used to be different on weekends and on weekdays, and we went to 2 a.m. every night of the week.
The bars close at 1:30.
Just to keep consistency, and that's why I think we're saying 2 a.m.
You know, we can make it either, it's, you know, it doesn't matter.
Blessing and a curse, sometimes too much wording.
Yeah.
I can remove
And-
item F if the board wishes.
Yeah, well, I think it's very important. I'm not trying to, ignore Josh's issue, but I think it is important that everybody's aware of it, you know, because until we get a complaint, we're usually not that worried about it, but when people take a floodlight and shine it on the neighbor's house, or put it on a pole and shine it on the neighbor's house, I think that's the issue, and we want to control that type of behavior. I think common sense, you know, prevails.
Okay, one last question. Vinny, some of their development now today, is that going to affect the development?
So it would be taken into consideration, but planned development was development that goes before, like planning and zoning commission. They have a landscape plan, a lighting plan,
Okay.
all that. So it is my understanding, and I could be wrong, I could be corrected, that would supersede, that project is approved and reviewed, they don't abide to that ordinance. And let me know if I'm wrong on that understanding.
Oh, I think that's correct. Okay.
So if a dealership came in and
Yep.
they wanted more parking lots than what we have as a requirement, that would be reviewed at board level, zoning level and board level.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or concerns?
How do we measure it? How do we measure the foot candles?
The lumens.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, do we have a device
Probably
that
each
does
light
it?
gives off a different,
Yeah, we actually have a light meter app on our phone that we use for our
I
light
do
candle
too.
meter, and it's sensitive to your camera light on your phone that gives you.
I have that on my
Is it true
phone.
and accurate? Is there a more
Science
accurate thing out there? But both of them have worked in regards to our driver mechanism of LEDs on Sunnyside to try to address the concerns on people on Sunnyside Avenue. So, iPhone would be my primary source to say. I mean, there's probably deviance with all meters. Just like a gas meter has like a 0.2 reading deviation. But, I mean, if you're 2-foot candles versus a 0.03, you'd be like, okay, I'm gonna let this go. But if you're 2, and I can see myself running, obviously, you're in violation. You're spilling outside the property line.
And then the lighting plans, what is our plan for that? I mean, because it is going to apply to everyone at some point, right? We need to determine that date, but
Yeah, most developments that come in when they do their build-outs and stuff, they do a photometric when they do parking lot light. As an example, like the fire department upgraded to an LED light, we requested them to give us a photometric so we could see the impact of the spillover on Johnsburg Road and the surrounding neighborhood. We did a photometric layout when we did these park lights here, photometric layout when we did this municipal building. I don't think that was my intention to get a photometric plan for a residential house. That wasn't my vision. It's really for the commercial developments.
but all existing commercial developments today will have to present a plan to the village by this whatever date?
I would say no. It's just for compliance, not necessarily putting maybe I need to reword that paragraph a little bit or look further into it. But it's really for the complaints.
I think it's Josh's question that we're going to go and start looking at every commercial development.
Are we requiring
Making
existing
them
developments to come up with a
comply?
plan?
I think if there is a complaint, we would address it with the existing business and ask them to comply. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
we
When
understand
the
that
sign
not
comes
everything
over
in the,
For a business, it comes with
that
a
is,
photometric.
everything that's there can be changed tomorrow. You know?
Yeah, that may just require some wording change, and that's kind of how I read that.
Understood.
I could have just read it wrong too.
Bad habit of typing the way I talk, so.
Most of us do. Anything else, Josh?
No, again, we're going to discuss this at the next meeting, I'm assuming? Something?
We're going to ask for approval at the next meeting, and if there's any input that you want to bring back to the next
Yeah,
meeting.
I just want a chance to bring it
Just
up.
have discussion again.
Yeah, I don't see it being a
If there's
problem.
any input from anybody else, that's fine.
A lot of it would just be changing instructions.
Okay. I'm going to move to authorize correspondence regarding 2604 Chapel Hill Road. I'd like a motion and a second, and then discussion by the board discussion. Do I have a motion? Motion by trustee Letzger and a second by trustee Morris. Okay. Please read it and discuss. We'll have discussion on the letter before we give it to Jeff, okay, about what we're doing. It's not to discourage anything that he's doing, any business that he's doing. We encourage businesses to come, but we want to do it legally and in the right way, okay? And for the board cannot legally do it without going through planning and zoning, okay, because of the use. Now, that is by state Illinois law, correct? That matters have to go like this before planning and zoning, before we can approve it.
Yeah, most notably because of the public hearing. If there's going to be a change in zoning, there's a requirement that adjacent property owners, I think within 250 feet, be notified of that proposed zoning change, if that's what you're alluding to.
I'm alluding to. And I think we've been through this before, Many of us maybe weren't on the board, but a few of us have been through this. And, to address the history, Rick, I know you were there with me, and probably four of us, on how we got to this point. But legally, in order to do it, that's how it's got to be done. And correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor.
No, that's correct.
Okay, so read the letter. And we had a motion and a second to discuss it.
I support the letter. After we met the last time, I went back through all my old zoning stuff and looked at options. And the biggest obstacle is the acreage does not meet these other two designations that Jeff is asking. I think that's going to be a real problem to change that. I think it's a bad precedent to change it. I think B1 works here. That's my opinion. And I think it is planning and zoning. You got to go that route. If you're going to look for a variance, you got to go through them, see what they recommend, and kick it back to us. But personally, there weren't enough permitted uses in those other zonings to allow all the things that Jeff is asking. So I do think B1, I'm glad, I think that's what we should be offering here. That's just my opinion, though.
And we can't legally offer that here. It's got to go through
Right.
planning and zoning so that neighbors have their input.
Right.
That's state law.
Ed,
Yes,
do you
Rick.
mind if I address the board for a second?
No,
Because
no.
I realize that some of the board members have not even been privy to some of the conversations that I have shared with Jeff when he came and met with Josh and I and Ed and Claudette. The thing that this situation, irregardless, I'm not even speaking about this situation. I just think that it's very important that the board, the residents, the people that are in the room understand the history behind this, okay? Sort of like making myself the historian because I've been around here I was in my early 30s and now I'm in my late 60s. We sat through a lot of these things, and I just want to bring you guys the value of what came decades ago up to current time. First of all, it's important to realize that the village of Johnsburg doesn't proactively go out and look for violations. Okay, we never have. We only respond to situations like this where complaints are brought to the village that somebody is doing something that is in violation of the current codes that are on the books. Okay, that's the position that started this whole thing, and I think I explained that to you at the time. We didn't start this, okay? We didn't run it. Everybody in this room would like to say, yeah, whatever you want, because it's the easiest thing to do, okay? No, everybody wants everybody to be happy at the end of the day. But having sat through a PUD thing years and years ago where there was a public meeting like this, there was a very, very spirited conversation between two groups of residents that were in that subdivision. One that was screaming that they did not want sidewalks in their subdivision, and the other that was screaming that they did want sidewalks in their subdivision. Okay? The board at that time was in a position where no matter which decision they made, they were going to get half the people in the room mad, right? That's the position that we have come through the years with this. The gentleman whose name is on this building was a planner. And by his planning and stewardship, we got the village of Johnsburg from where it started to where it is today. And a lot of us in this room, I think all of us in this room, think this is a wonderful place to live, and we're very proud of what we've accomplished over time. In the beginning, one of the biggest things that we spent money and resources on was planning. We planned for everything ad nauseum. We brought in professional planners. We had, actually at that time, there was 2 different committees. There was a planning committee and there was a zoning committee. And they worked together, but they worked separately because the planning part of it was so important. Okay? We brought in professionals. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we probably had tens of thousands of hours of resident and stakeholder input into the planning of the village as it is. Okay? Through that exercise and through that money that was done, the ordinances as they are written today, that's why they are written the way they were. And in those different zoning categories, there are reasons behind the language that's in each individual zoning category, okay? I don't know the specifics, okay? I just know that details like that were discussed ad nauseum because everybody had an input, and that's why those ordinances exist as they do. I think it's just important that when you as petitioners and you as board members have to decide on these things about what to do in situations like that, realize that those ordinances as they exist that way for a reason, at a lot of cost, with a lot of resident input, okay, and with a lot of money and time being spent to get them there. I'm not saying that you guys, the board and the community can grow and do whatever it wants to do, but also please give some or a lot of consideration to where we are today. It wasn't something that was just pulled out of a book somewhere and we just adopted it. Every single ordinance on the books was gone over time and time again, and our ordinances are revisited every X number of years now, and all of the board members, even the existing board members, have gone over ordinances from the past that have been revisited and changed. Okay? The zoning board, the zoning ordinances are there because, that's what we thought at the time was the best thing to do. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that fact, and, I'm not trying to weigh in on either side of this argument, but I just think everybody should be aware of the history.
And don't call Tim Hartnett tomorrow because Rick's name's on the wrong plaque. So Rick is not the village engineer. Okay, so otherwise Tim will go all the way. Another mess. All right.
So, I would say that I'm opposed to the content of this letter, and I understand the work and appreciate the work that went into those plans. That was the best information that we could get and put together, but that was the best information at the time, right? And I don't know, it's been a while since that plan was developed, but plans change, right? So, is what they're doing against the ordinance? Yes, right? But like the plans, right, ordinance are meant to be changed. So I worry that by us being inflexible in situations like this, and this is just a situation that's in front of us today, but talking to other business owners, it does make them less likely to want to move forward with a new project because they don't want to. These guys have spent a lot of time and a lot of effort working on this, and most would not, right? Most would just say, I don't want to fight this fight, and move on to somewhere else. So by us making it this difficult, right or wrong, right? Whatever we decide to do is what we decide, but this is a deterrent to other businesses wanting to come into Johnsburg, in my opinion. And they're not going to want to fight that fight. They're just going to go elsewhere. They're going to go Spring Grove, Richmond, McHenry, wherever. So does B1 work for them, for the gym? Yes, but it doesn't work for the rest of their business. And I understand that they don't want to change to B1 to try and help a renter. and again, they're doing a lot of work for this renter, and I'm sure, I hope she appreciates that, but for them to alter the course of the rest of their business for a renter is, I understand why they're not wanting to do that. So, again, as a business owner myself, I would be hard pressed to want to put in this fight if I were to try and bring business into town. So it's our job to say either, we can stick with what we have, or we can try and be flexible, try and work with people that come to us and say we want to do this that we didn't envision in a plan ever, because we can't predict it. And it's up to us to determine whether or not we want to.
So I guess my question to you, Josh, is which one of these designated classifications do we want to change? This blueprint is here for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And if we blow it up and say, well, we really like these guys, and let's do a deal for them. We're going to change all the categories, just allow everything? I mean, this has been a process that we've been a part of for 25 years. That we have these permitted uses with much discussion. It's like, what do you see? What do you want us to do? Because you're being very vague and kind of throwing some shade and,
What's your
what
zoning on
businesses.
your business, Josh?
I too.
Okay,
Which is,
I think we'll make a point of that.
you've got plenty of acreage to do that, right? These guys don't.
I agree, but why is that correct? Why is the 2-acre minimum correct?
I think for setbacks, things like that, noise, light, all the things that we have to consider. If he's going to be making pallets, do you think the neighbor next door wants to hear it?
But he already has that capability. He has I-1 zoning. The only thing we're talking about here is the gym.
Right.
The gym goes away, and he can make all the pallets he wants forever. So that's not really the question here. The question is, like we talked about earlier, industrial flex. We don't have
that.
We don't have it, but why don't we have it?
Because we haven't had the need to have it.
But now it's presented to us. This all changes.
But see, he's not compliant because of the acreage. So you're saying we want industrial in less than 2 acres? Is that what you're suggesting? I don't think the neighbors would like that.
I think we're saying that when we go to this industrial flex, which we don't have, but we do have, in a C2, C1 zoning district, okay? I think the problem here is that, our staff is here to enforce and comply and lead people down the road with the ordinances that we have in place. Okay? Jeff and his partners came in and addressed this with the gym, and everybody, from what I understand, Jeff can disagree with what I understand, if he wants to, that they agreed that B1 would work. And that's what they were going to do, okay? And then everybody's okay with that, and then it's decided, I guess, from now, it's what I hear, okay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that their realtor and their lawyer told them they have I-flex zoning, which they don't have, okay? We're not going to change, in my opinion, every zoning issue that we have, every type of zoning we have, because of one issue. Like Rick just said, we'd love to say, okay, go ahead and do it. But it doesn't make sense to me to do it. We gave them the advice of what to do, and Jeff can say we didn't or we did. It's all good with me, okay? I'll let him say that now while we're on this part of the board discussion, okay? But a lot of work went in to put all the zoning and stuff in place, okay? So are we going to say, okay, it's okay there, and then you want to do the same thing in your building, and it's okay there? Is that even a consideration?
Me putting a gym in my building?
No,
I mean,
well, but a different use in your I-2 zoning.
so why should it be?
I'm just asking.
I mean, it's not currently, but if I were to sell my building and somebody came in and wanted to do something different, we're just going to tell them no.
It would be one of the permitted uses, yeah, and you can do it.
Permitted uses.
Okay. That's,
But if the
that's-
conversation is, and maybe this is what you're getting to, you want to talk about permitting, I mean, to me, there's inherent problems with that site. It's too small. So what do you tackle? Do you change the permitted uses for I-1? Do you change the permitted uses in B1? What do you think the solution is?
I mean, I don't think they go to B1. I think we change permitted uses in I1, which they are the single property, right? So it doesn't apply to anybody else. for
But
one.
non-conforming, right? Because it's
Less than 2 acres.
acre and a half.
1.43.
But wasn't that,
It's board discussion, Mike. I'm sorry.
can he say something?
Josh, what do you
said if Jeff wants to
envision?
disagree.
Again, I think the two options are,
I'm willing to listen to that, okay?
Yep.
But it's really board discussion, and he's the one that we're addressing this letter to, and if he wants to say something before we give him the letter, I think that's appropriate, okay? And Josh is raising his things. I think anybody else have concerns, I think we ought to discuss it right now, okay? Because we can't go on and on and on. We said we'd look into it. We bought, said we were going to look into it. We were going to think it out. That was, said.
I did pull out all my stuff.
Pulled out all your notes. I mean, you were on planning and zoning for years. Scott was on planning and zoning for years. I mean,
That
we
piece of
changed.
property is a
When that I-2 zoning was put there, Johnsburg was probably 300 people. There were no houses around it. It wasn't even thought of. It was, I believe, a horse slaughtering operation in the early days, okay? But I'm not old enough to remember that, and so
That's not how you remember it.
that's how I remembered it. Anyways.
I'm still
So-
curious.
yes, I1 zoning and allow that permitted use. As a conditional use, maybe? I'm not, again, we did figure that part out, but it's just on the chart. It's not checked, so it's not allowed in I1 zoning. Then he keeps the zoning he has, and that additional use is allowed in that one parcel in the
Doesn't
village.
that even have to go to planning and zoning?
So for clarifications,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes,
it's
it
my
does.
understanding that there are several businesses operating currently out of there, and he intends to retain them. And also intends to retain the I usage, which would provide for even further use of that property. And it sounds as if it's going to overburden that site. I think the concern is that there's an awful lot of businesses on that property. It's 1.4 acres. And I'm not, just simply saying, well, we'll add that use. Well, that's just yet another use you're adding on to all these other uses he's currently doing. on the property.
Overburden it in what way? You're talking parking and restaurants?
Entirely, yeah. I mean, there's so many different factors that need to go into even taking a look at whether all these uses are supposed to be allowed at the same time. From a health department perspective, from septic capabilities, from, bathroom facilities and parking conditions. So I understand that several of the parking spots up along Route 31 or Chapel Hill Road are actually striped in the right-of-way. They're not valid parking spots. So there's just a lot of different factors, and I think that's the concerns that Beth and some of the others are expressing here about taking an action that's going to actually create a situation where this property is heavily burdened and can't support it.
So, from a bathroom standpoint, they have 2 bathrooms, and again, as
Again,
far
that's
as I
a health
hear,
department
right?
issue.
I know, and that's not for us to take up.
But it does become a factor when we're permitting stuff. It most certainly does. We do need to take a look at whether or not parking, bathrooms, health department requirements are all being met.
But if they're not met, then that the burden is on them, not on us as a village, right? If they can't meet those
Well, if you're asking us
requirements.
to take action on a matter, we do. We do need to know that. It's no different than a development coming in and we're developing a site with several residential homes that are going to be on there. We have a responsibility to make sure that they're testing for septic suitability and that all those properties can be, supported. So the same thing would apply here when they're asking us for consideration, yes.
And if they can qualify those, then they would be able to move forward, right?
And I think all this letter is basically saying is, certainly, but you need to take that to zoning. It's
Right, and I know, no matter what we decide here right now, I understand it needs to go to zoning.
Right.
Again, it's just, it's going to go to zoning and it's going to come back to us, so.
Anything that happens, they would have to go to planning and zoning.
Yeah, no, I know that.
It's not like we can just say, okay, it's legal, because it's not.
I know, but the letter says, we don't agree that you should pursue this. If you want to pursue this, go to planning and zoning, and that's the next step. But this letter, I think, says...
What the letter's saying, basically, is I don't want to see Jeff spend good money after bad trying to get something approved that I don't think, and Scott and Beth were on planning and zoning. I've never, ever called them up and told them what to do on a planning and zoning issue in all the years you were there, because that's their expertise. And that's not what I'm here to do, okay? We're here to do it the legal way, okay? And get the input. You're limiting the input or ignoring the input from the neighbors if you don't go to planning and zoning, because they should be notified. They should be told what's going to happen, even if it goes to that. What I'm saying is, I don't want them to spend a lot of money on something that will go to planning and zoning, because that's how it has to legally be done, okay? And planning and zoning doesn't, it's just my thought. They may go to planning and zoning, Jeff might say, yep, and he might say, they might say, yeah, I'm okay with it, okay? And then it comes to the board, and, the majority of the time, there'll be discussion at the board level, but the board will usually go along with planning and zoning. Not always, because they can discuss it again. All I'm saying is, we told Jeff that we would give him some direction, and the only direction I can think is the letter, and that's why I wanted to put the letter here. I wanted to make sure that he knew we were going to discuss it, okay? And give him the letter so he knows that legally this is how we got to go forward.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with
that's
that.
all I'm trying to do. And if something I said, Jeff, I know it's board discussion, is not true, that, on how this was presented, I mean, that, I can honestly say the last time you were here, well, with this zoning, I could put a marijuana dispensary or a strip club. I don't appreciate those comments. I mean, I don't think anybody in Johnsburg wants a strip club. And, marijuana dispensary, maybe be very profitable, maybe I would think that's great. But anyways, I probably wouldn't agree with that either.
Can I speak, please?
Yes, please do.
To that point, I didn't mean to disrespect you guys. It's just that is what's in your zoning map. I mean, I didn't write this, zoning wrote this, right? So my point to it was, I'm sitting here fighting for this girl in her gym. I think things can be changed, right? Like, it was wrote in that I could, grow marijuana and sell to dispensaries, whatever. It's in the zoning.
I don't think growing, but
Okay, well, I can read
it is.
growing is, that's nuisance.
Again, this kind of brings me back to when I was discussing my first meeting with Claudette, and it was, hey, B1, this is going to work for you. Nothing was discussed on that day of what I do for a living and how that would affect my business. It was, this is what made this happen. Okay, all we're thinking is, great, this is wonderful, we can make this work. We walk out like, oh, cool, B1. We don't know what B1 means, right? We have no education on zoning, right? So, yeah, and even the email to you that you sent to me, you said, Jeff, this could all go away if you just go to B1. I don't think you understood what that means for our business. If COVID happens again and this gym closes, okay?
That's a big what if, Jeff.
Oh, did you expect COVID to happen? Did you expect business to close?
No, but we can't we can't
Jim's failed.
plan for all the what-ifs down the road.
Well, right, but it does happen. My business isn't supported by this gym, okay? I'm just doing it because I think
I
it's a
know,
good thing for the community.
and we're
So-
trying to come to a solution
But
that
you don't
fixes.
even know anything about my business.
No,
nor
I
have you asked me
don't. I don't
anything
claim
about it.
to.
So
I don't claim
when you
to.
email me and say, this can all go away if you go to B1.
I didn't say that it could all go away, but I think I said
said, I don't know why
this
you're
is
so
a
hung
good
up on
fit.
Let me interrupt. I need to interrupt.
So,
We're getting into the weeds here.
And that's fine.
This
And
is
that's
part
fine.
of, let me explain for a moment.
I'll move forward. That's fine.
Part of the process with a public hearing is learning this information. This is what the property is being used for. This is the property in the vicinity and the uses. And this is why we think it's appropriate. All this is being hashed out at the board level. And what I think the village is conceding here is that we don't know exactly what's on the property. So when you fling the allegation that trustee Foreman does not know your business, she readily admits that.
Correct.
Because there has been no hearing, there's been no presentation of a petition saying, here are the uses, here are the facilities. So I think what the consensus of the village is that if you wish to move forward, you'd ask for some guidance. I wouldn't consider it to be direction. It's something that, if this is something you wish to utilize, we think that it's appropriate that if there's a change in zoning, that it go before a public hearing. Can we all agree on that fundamental point? So, and so this isn't a direction, it's not telling you what to do. I think you've asked for some guidance. I think, too, that I don't think this situation is going to arise again in the future. This is a unique situation. I don't think you're going to have a situation again. I mean, and Claudette or Rick, tell me if I'm wrong in the history, but this is the first time that I'm aware with the village that the representations being made to the village that, was there a dual broker here? Were there two brokers?
No, it was...
Two realtors? I'm not sure if I have the right language.
No, it was...
One broker?
Yeah, it was one broker, and then we hired our real estate attorney
Okay.
to do the transaction with that broker.
What I think the village is not going to see in the future again, anytime soon, is a unique situation in which we're being represented to that the realtor misrepresented the zoning on the property. The buyers involved here, the attorney, and no one else associated with that group examined the uses in the industrial zoning district that they were in, correct? Yes?
Correct, yes.
That's unique. I've never heard of that in the history of the village. Someone purchasing commercial property and saying, representing to us, we didn't know what the uses were in that district. That's unique. I think, too, and there's the reason you're probably not going to see this, is that the conventional approach is that when someone comes into a community, incorporated, unincorporated, whether it's the county or the villages, the typical situation is the request in the purchase contract for a zoning contingency. That we want to make sure that if we're buying this commercial building, and this is the use that's in it, that that's appropriate, that that's kosher. When we bought a building for my brother that, even though orthodontia is not a high impact use, I wanted to make sure that Mount Prospect agreed with that, you know? So neither of those circumstances happened here, and that is the first time I've ever heard of something like this. That's unique. I don't think the village is going to face another situation where there's no zoning contingency, and the representation is being made that no one associated with the buyer's group considered or even looked at the uses in the industrial district. So I think it's a unique situation. I don't think the problem lies with the structuring of the ordinance or how businesses come to Johnsburg, but rather I think the consensus is that what I think the village board can agree on is that if there's going to be a change in zoning, that does have to go to public hearing. And I think that Now we're getting into the details. Without a site plan, without a map, what's on the property, that we don't know what's on the property, which we readily admit, I don't think we do. And I think that's where that's usually hashed out at a public hearing, preceded by notice to adjacent landowners to say, there's going to be a request for a rezoning, and notice goes out. And those details are gone over, and the Planning and Zoning Commission is kind of the front line. They're the ones who delve into these details. They study the existing uses on the property. They make a recommendation as to whether it's appropriate, taking into account comprehensive plan, whether they think it's appropriate. They make a recommendation. It's something that is put before the board eventually. And as the president points out, it may be agreed to, it may not be. But I think for tonight, when we're getting into the details of numbers of bathrooms, the details, this is all something that goes to a public hearing. And that's where these details are hashed. The petitioner puts on their case. I think there was a question earlier about, I think Trustee Hagan pointed out, it's the petitioner's burden to demonstrate why this is appropriate. And so I think we're getting too much in the minutia where this goes before a public hearing. And I don't think I want the petitioner to think that there's anything else that the village is directing them to or telling them to. I think again and again and again they've asked for guidance on this, given these unique circumstances that I've never seen before in the history of the village. That's a heck of a situation to be in. And two, that this has now been before the village board a couple times?
3 times, probably.
Okay, 3 times? Okay.
Only one time, and then everything else was behind in the other room there.
Okay.
I don't know if you
And twice then?
So only once in front of the board, and then probably 2 to 3 times before that in the back room over here.
So now I think it's time that...
Couple times with, maybe once with staff and then once with Josh.
Yeah, twice with staff and then
So I
once
think
with...
now it's time that if there's a change for the rezoning, I think everyone on the board can agree to do the public hearing, whatever the request may be. They have that First Amendment right. And then 2, this is where adjacent landowners have an opportunity to comment. That's part of their due process. And so I think that is the consensus that I'm looking for from the village board, I think, in connection with this letter.
We have a motion in a second, and we got the letter, and that's why I wanted it to come here, and everybody approved. That's the direction that we understand that Jeff has to take. Otherwise, we could go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You've been back and forth 2, 3 times. The other part about it is the legal part of it is the only way we can do it.
Correct.
I mean, there's no way around it by state statute, correct or wrong?
Correct. Even in these incredible circumstances that are being presented to the village.
Correct.
You know, and I understand. And who is the realtor that made the representation of this flex zoning?
Bruce Kaplan.
Bruce Kaplan, yeah.
And what does the attorney say?
I haven't, you know, I briefly spoke to the attorney, but we wanted to see how this plays out working with the village to try and...
Has anyone asked Mr. Kaplan why he thinks there's flex zoning?
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of past that, right? Like, what, you know, like, I really, he wasn't my realtor. Like, I could probably get his number and ask him and things like that. But again, like, we had no intention of doing things the wrong way whatsoever.
So even despite what's being represented to us as a misrepresentation, that I thought there might be some recourse, but the recourse is against that realtor who owed Jeff that duty. It's not that there's a tremendous mistake in these very unique circumstances where no one looked at the village ordinance before buying the property, closing on it. There was no knowledge of any of the uses on that property. The attorney didn't bring to their attention the uses on the property. There was no zoning contingency in the contract, correct?
I don't believe there would be.
Right.
I would imagine not.
That's a unique thing. I've never heard of something like this.
We've never bought anything industrial, you know, without partners who handled that portion of it.
So I think that this is the process. And I mean, obviously Jeff and his group, or who are the owners of the property, is welcome to petition for this. But now this has come before the village board, I think on 2 occasions now. It's time for the adjacent landowners to be notified if the group wants to go forward with a rezoning request. And I think we're in agreement as to that, correct?
Josh, are you in agreement?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the process, I
So the
agree.
letter is what we're trying to direct them to do.
Well, we're to guide them. We're not telling anybody what to do, but just, again and again, we've
We're just
been
trying to
asked.
give them all our
Yes.
thoughts, and I want the whole board to understand.
Yeah, but I mean,
Why we're
the
doing it.
letter does give an opinion as well. The last line. We believe your best option is to seek a change. That's an opinion from the board to them. So,
It's an opinion of
Or a
a
recommendation.
recommendation that I don't want to see them spend money trying to go to get this approved, and it won't get approved. I mean, it's got to go to zoning and planning, and if they won't approve it, the change, then that's all. I don't
Yeah,
want to see them spending good money after
no,
bad.
I'm not arguing the process of this at all. I mean,
Okay.
I understand where this needs to go. And again, this, like I said, this is the case that's in front of us now. I'm speaking it more in an abstract way, saying this has ramifications beyond just this business. So, and that's my opinion, right? I'm just expressing my opinion as
Do you have-
a board member and as a business
Do you
owner.
have specific examples? I know Sarah alluded to it, and you're saying it too.
I can give you one.
Okay.
I have 4 businesses, located in different towns, and I plan to open more businesses. I'm a young guy, entrepreneur, and, maybe in the future, my next venture is not going to be in Johnsburg because it hasn't been very easy for me so far, right? Whereas,
But is it because of the village, or is it?
yes. It has been. I did not agree to B1. I agreed to B1 on the first meeting when I didn't know what B1 meant.
I know.
Okay, so I just want to make that clear for one.
Sure.
2, I don't feel that the property is overwhelmed. This gym has a max capacity of 10 people, okay? We have 16 parking stalls. At max, I have 4 employees for my 3 businesses. It seems like a lot of businesses, but they're brokerages, all ran by the same people. So it's really not that many businesses. It's the same 4 people parking. The public adjuster, who I want to rent the other office there, he's in the field all day. I might see him once every 2 weeks. It's because he comes in and takes a Zoom call from the office because he wants a nice office to, have in the background when he takes his call. I don't see him. That's why you've never seen his truck there barely. It's very low traffic. So, like I said, the gym has a max capacity of 10, and that's a CrossFit rule for a coach, okay? And really, she probably has 4 to 7 people there per class. Okay, I have 16 parking stalls. A couple might be in the right of way, but all we did was just restripe what the apartments had there for many, many years. I have a ton of room in my parking lot to add more parking spots. I could add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more parking spots and have plenty of room in that lot. So to this day, the gym's been operating, a couple, 2, 3 months now. It's never been overwhelmed. It's never taken up spots where my staff can't park in the front. I kind of just want to bring in, I just want to talk about, the apartments were 1.43 acres. They were granted a variance. Why were they granted a variance on that piece of property? Same rules, same everything. Signed off by the current board and Claudette. I don't understand why that was allowed. But I can't petition to have this gym stay. That's the same property, the same acreage. I don't understand that. And again, I'm fighting for this girl. It has no financial benefit really to me. I believe in a gym in a community. I drive to a different community, go to a gym every single day. We don't have one of those here. So I like the mental health part of it. I like the community that it brings in. It's where I met most of my best friends. So I truly believe in it. And that's all that I wanted to say. I think that ordinances, things get changed all the time. Times change, so that's all that I'm asking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on the motion before we give them this letter? With that on the roll, Trustee Morse? Aye. Trustee Hagan?
No.
Trustee Clemson?
I'm going to abstain.
Trustee Moore?
Hi.
Aye. Aye. So we have?
The motion passes because under the Prosser rule, trustee Clemstein's vote of abstention goes with the majority.
Positive vote, right?
Correct.
Majority.
It passes.
Majority. Okay. Motion passed. Okay. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion, or I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Pullman.
Are we discussing this tonight, Claudia, or not? The non-highway stuff? Is what you-
Sorry, what?
That's what you said earlier.
Go ahead.
No, I thought you had told me we were discussing what you and I were discussing.
Oh, yeah, he was going to bring it up on a president's report, he skimmed
Oh,
over it,
oh,
yeah.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Michael, there were some questions that
Legal
Josh, I
questions,
sent to
sure.
you, that Josh had regarding non-highway vehicles.
Yeah, and Josh, I'll tell you, Josh, do you want to just reiterate your questions for the board? so
Yeah, we can
everyone's
go
on the
through
same
them
page?
again. Again, we discussed, I don't remember if it was last meeting or the meeting before, but I just had some questions about, it was the meeting that we discussed, allowing non-highway vehicles on, or I suppose, telling non-highway vehicles that they cannot go on paths that are not approved by either the village or the property owners, right? So as part of that discussion, I just came up with another list of questions as we were going through the details on that. Most of them deal with the liability to the village with regard to non-highway vehicles. So particularly, does the village carry extra insurance to cover these? And do we list them specifically on our policy that we allow them?
I don't know
Which I
anything about
answered
it.
those.
Yeah, you did, and they were both no, right?
Right, correct.
But I just looking for more context.
Well, they're no different than vehicles, any kind of vehicle on a roadway, whether it's a bicycle or a bus or a truck or whatever. There's no need to, insure them outside of the normal scope of our general liability.
And the insurance companies told us that.
We
Okay,
brought this information to them.
okay, good, that's,
I
again.
guess I'm trying to understand what kind of
We
coverage.
did that before.
I don't know, again, it's so, I mean, vehicles have the right to be on the road, right?
But they do as well by the state. They've been authorized by the
But
state.
they've been authorized by the state for the municipality to make the decision whether or not to allow them, right? So if a municipality doesn't allow them, obviously it's not a liability for that municipality, but if it does, then who bears that responsibility? The municipality would, right?
Well, no. Let me be clearer. No. The issue is going to be, as with any vehicle, bicycles. There's a lot of bicycle cases. There's sidewalk cases with respect to pedestrians. But the question is going to be is not just that the default is the village is responsible. The issue is going to be is whether there was a wrongful act by the municipality, or absent some sort of affirmative decision or action, that did the village do something wrongful by omission. So on top of this is the State Tort Immunity Act, which seeks to protect municipalities from tortious actions. For example, with respect to, people always think, well, there's liability in connection with a building permit decision, not of a financial kind. So the question is going to be is whether the village did something wrong, whether it did something by inaction, an omission, that proximately caused that accident. And, not that I've seen a golf cart case, but I think that the cases in the context of accidents, pedestrians, and sidewalks were, did the village have a duty to maintain the condition of a sidewalk or road that led to the accident? Was something icy? Was there a crack in the sidewalk? Or the panels of a different height? So the question is going to come down to the circumstances, whether that was the proximate cause of the accident, whether the village did something or was supposed to do something it didn't. And that's going to be the issue. And so there have been a lot of times that people would have thought that the village would have faced financial liability, but it did not because of the Tort Immunity Act. And no, I don't concur with the idea that the village is the default entity if there's an accident or something of that nature.
Good. I didn't know, so I wanted to be sure that we're...
Well, and I think that what we probably ought to do is, if anyone has any interest, I think we went through this analysis a great deal. We went through the issues with insurance. I think the staff went so far as to reach out to the insurance carrier before we took a vote.
We did.
Okay. So what I would encourage is, there was a much more extensive direction or discussion that went much beyond 8/11. I think it went on a little bit later, but I think that we probably ought to brush those off. And I think that staff actually brought back the comments from the insurance carrier about this. I think that might be helpful.
Well, it doesn't hurt to revisit.
Right, again, I just want to be sure. I just want to be sure that we as a village are covered, right?
Yep.
By having this. But then the other question, which again pertains to what we talked about at the last meeting, was how does that apply to private property?
We're not leading them to it. We're not telling them to go on private property.
Right, but we,
So it's like it's probably no different than a car going on private property.
So that's-
Well, no, you guys have to fill in the facts. I mean,
That's
it's- my son who's getting his permit, say he drives on private property, is that the circumstance you're telling me about, where he doesn't have the right to go on it?
I'm saying that in this case, in town, right, there are some private property parcels that have carts go through them, right? And do we
Without
have-
an agreement?
Do we have agreements with those private property owners? If we don't, do we need to get agreements with those private property owners? And what happens in the case like this one we had, where a private property owner does not want carts on their property?
Well, then
But
it
carts
sounds...
continue to use their property. I
Well,
mean,
that's not kosher. That's
no,
not
it's
kosher.
absolutely not, but it happens, right? And
Right, but, okay, so
Well, I think Josh is going on to the Heman case where Joe didn't want him going across the property. We stopped him from going across the property. But we don't
That's
know
not the
every
only- that's-
place, we don't know every place, Josh, where people are going across private property. We're not putting private property on, leading them there without having an agreement.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a moment. One, not appropriate for that person to go on the property. Two, and the chief would provide more detail on this than me, but I suspect that if there's a no trespass sign, that person could be arrested for trespass because they have no right, and they don't have the permission to be on there. That's not appropriate. And then three, the Tort Immunity Act speaks to that. And that is, if the village fails to enforce an ordinance and say, for example, trespass, someone goes onto Mr. Heeman's property, gets in an accident, and someone said, that accident would have never occurred if the village had somehow known there was a trespass. No, the Tort Immunity Act says, no, there is no financial liability to a village for failure to enforce an ordinance. Otherwise, everyone would say, hey, someone came out of my property, there was a problem. So I mean, if that's what's going on, but so who have the complaints been by that there's been trespass of the carts? Mr. Heeman?
Well, that was a conversation that we addressed at the last meeting that Josh had with Mike and Joe, right?
right.
Josh?
But so in
And
the
they didn't
process
want
of...
the carts cutting through there, so we posted it the next day. No carts
Sign,
from motor
right.
vehicles, we put it up there, blocked it off.
Yeah, and then I think if there's a problem,
We did not have permission or an agreement with Mr. Heeman or Mike.
Right. So again, that's my question.
Yeah,
And-
if it's
And
because-
I think we have 3 agreements in place, 3 or 4 agreements in place. Yeah. But there's, I mean, a lot more properties, a lot more private properties that carts go on, whether they're supposed to or not, and whether the property owner allows it or not, we still don't have an agreement with them. And then the other part of that is in the agreement, particularly not in the old ones, but in the newer agreements, there's an indemnification clause that says that the village will step in and be responsible if there's an incident on an approved private property path. So, again, I'm looking at this from the standpoint of, is the village covered if God forbid there was something that happened? I don't want the village to, I don't want the property owner, obviously, I don't want a private property owner to suffer from
Yes,
that,
I mean,
from allowing us to do something, but the village.
I think in the short term, first, I mean, if the village promises to indemnify somebody, I don't have the language in front of me, indemnify that owner for whatever the scope is of that indemnification. And two, if there's an ongoing issue with people trespassing, and it's become a problem to the point where it's come to the board, it's probably time for those owners to invest in a very cheap sign to say no trespassing. If it's becoming that problematic, I'm sensitive to that.
Have you heard of problematics besides that? Have you have a complaint besides that?
There are no complaints that have come to the village. At least I have a list of the complaints for non-highway vehicles, and I've just heard comments, right?
Yeah, that's not appropriate.
That they don't necessarily, they haven't necessarily agreed to it. It happens kind of by default because of the location, but they don't have an agreement with the village, and they don't necessarily take a stance on it with the people that come onto their property.
Yeah, that's not appropriate. There is no Las Vegas rule that says, well, someone didn't tell me no, so I'm going to do it. No. And if it's become to the point where someone says it's a trespass and I don't want it, we need to look into that and pursue it. But that's not kosher.
And we will if we have a complaint.
But would it behoove us to get agreements in place with every private property owner that carts use?
No, I mean, let's put it this way. If the property owner, I know this is not coming from the attorney saying, don't come up with another legal project, but if you're telling me that there's a network of one or more properties in which the owner's given permission for carts to use, we don't need to say, wait a minute, we're not going to allow this informal arrangement to go forward. The attorney needs to draft an agreement, we need to intercede. No.
I mean, I think, some of the things that Josh had on his list was Angelo's. I think Angelo's don't have a problem. Raymond's, I don't think have a problem.
Again, it really is good for their business. But again, I'm looking at it from a liability standpoint, and B, from a private property owner that doesn't want it.
We all have our golf carts insured individually too.
So is the side-by-side.
Right, so would that fall on us? Would the liability fall to?
No.
If I'm driving half-times and I spill my golf cart, that's my liability, isn't
It would be like if somebody, just again, for instance, if somebody drove their golf cart into your yard, right, and then took it over.
Well, if we show a path.
I do too, but.
If we show a path on the map, okay, and it's across private property, we should have an agreement with those people.
Yes.
To do that.
Yes.
But if it's not on the map and we're not directing people there,
I would agree.
and somebody else goes on trespass on the property, I don't know how you'd ever control it.
I would not recommend that the village inject itself in a situation in which the landowner has an informal arrangement with other people to use carts. I don't see, unless someone asks us to. And I think all this is voluntary. You don't hear me saying, if they want to do it, they can. If they don't wish to, they don't have to. If outside the context of the network of paths on the map, people want to do their own thing, as far as I know, they're welcome. Again, provided that they're not going against Trustee Hagan's situation of, I'll call it trespass. Maybe that's too legal.
Really, that's what it is, right? It's trespassing on private property.
Sure.
So then what do we want to inform those property owners is their recourse?
Well,
like we did with Mike and like
the same thing that the village did 31 years ago. And the problem that I understood the village was facing in 1994 was snowmobiles. The big thing was the snowmobiles.
I was comparing it a lot to that.
By the same token, I think we worked with the snowmobile club to say, guys, you're going voluntarily on a lot of these people's properties, and I don't think there was a village map. I think there was a ski club, but I think the ski club too, the local ski club, to say, guys, you're going to ruin this. If you're going onto other people's property, please don't. And I don't think it was a law enforcement issue. I think it was more of a peer pressure. And I think the same thing here, that if people are getting offended, understandably, because carts are going onto their property when they don't want to be part of the system, we have to get that word out. I don't know what the best way that is.
We've been trying to do that in e-blast and stuff, tell people to obey the rules.
Yeah.
It's private property, don't go on it. But, I mean,
It's
You know, that
not
we-
always followed very well.
well, with everything. I mean, we had the situation where somebody went up to, you know,
The ski hill with the trip country.
not the ski hill, but the sledding hill with what was said to be a side-by-side. It ended up being a pickup truck and it was caught, okay? But I don't know how we solve all
Caught
that.
on foot.
Yeah, Vinny went running out after it.
For the
Well,
record.
that's because we can still run it, so good job. So,
Still catching his breath.
Still out of breath.
if those people, I think just like Mike and Joe, if those people say they don't want, you know, somebody is crossing their property illegally, we'll stop it. If somebody's crossing, I saw Prem on the list, if you got a problem with that, let's stop it. Put a trespassing sign up and stop it. But
Yeah.
how are you going to control people from, we're going to put a no trespassing sign on every lot in town that doesn't want them? I think that would be a little...
That's what they choose, yeah. Then
Well, that's
it's
their choice.
It's their private property.
They can put it up.
I just, again, I want to make sure we're protecting private property owners' rights. That's,
I think we do go above and beyond to try to do
It
that.
happens a lot, like in.
And it was very much discussed when that ordinance, and that was granted. I mean, we looked into everything upside down and sideways, so
It just
I
happens.
don't
the
know
same.
why.
It's like, we don't have it in town because people can't hunt, but if you buy property in unincorporated areas and they tell you to mark your property every so many feet, no trespassing, if you don't want anybody in there. So it truly needs to be marked. And Michael, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that's what people do, they mark their property that way, or they would say no carts or whatever. I mean, we're gonna get more burdensome to the homeowner, or the owner of the property, but.
Well, I just saw
it's
some
private
people
property.
on Josh's list there, I don't think, you know, like, I don't think Raymond's is objecting to it.
I don't think so.
Angelo's
That
is
was,
objecting to
that
it.
list was just people that I know carts are on their property, and again, that was a question of whether or not we have an agreement with them.
I mean, and I'd be glad to go talk to them and see if they have a problem. I think they do.
Yeah, those, most of those do benefit from having the carts.
Bars, restaurants, and grocery
Absolutely.
stores.
Yeah, well, you know.
I would think they benefit, but that's up to them to.
But again, it was just, it was a stance of whose liability then is it if they're on there without express written permission, I guess.
It's a parking lot.
Kind of look at it like a bicycle, UTV, golf cart, cars, there's some kind of
Yeah, I
categories.
think there's different circumstances. I mean, for a one-time offender, you know, I have a crazy neighbor. I have cameras. Are you laughing at me?
I'm laughing at you. I don't know what you're doing, Mike, on all the cameras though.
This goes to Sarah Hagan's skepticism that, true, you know, the police will probably not ticket someone who goes into Val's parking lot one time and say theoretically, Mr. Val says, I don't want you in my parking lot. But I think that if there's an issue with trespass, in all seriousness, you have to try to get that person on camera. You know, there's evidentiary issues. I know that there's probably going to be a warning involved, but it depends. I think it's one thing to cross Val's without permission, but when someone has, in this case, maybe two no trespass signs and says, listen, we mean it. That's clear. You're on the camera doing this. I think that's probably going to bear a ticket. And maybe worse than the ticket and the fine, visiting a judge for a morning or the better part of an afternoon up in Woodstock, which some of the time imprints a lesson on that person. So, I mean, I know there's circumstances. I mean, Val's, businesses, Raymond's, they don't care, perhaps. But I think that if this is a problem, I take that seriously because we went through this before. I think we did fix it. I think we could do so to say, listen, be sensitive, and at some point you're going to face a ticket beyond a warning.
And we try to, you know, to encourage everybody or relate to everybody that it's a privilege. And, you know,
I just think we should.
I don't think anybody wants the privilege to go away.
Exactly.
I think most of the residents are really happy with it, and I think we want to keep it, you know.
And
it was,
like we've always talked about.
It was investigated long and hard before we ever did it, you know.
Yeah, and 98% of the people are great. right? I mean, it's that 2% that kind of hurts it for everybody else.
Going out to South Dakota and go down 41st Street 8-way lane highway on your side-by-side with your shotgun on it, I couldn't care. You know?
But Michael, I hope you have your lights turned downward. on your
Okay,
cameras.
I will do that.
But yeah, so I think that it would be a good practice to just send reminders at a regular interval, right? Just
We
to
were
make
going
sure.
to do that, and I think we've been pretty...
I think
we've been
what's
pretty
what's
consistent.
come through has been good. So, but everybody just needs a good reminder every once in a while. So.
But, you know, let's face it, all us boys have done stupid things like that. Okay, at least I...
Girls never do.
Yeah.
I was 2% at one time, bad girl.
I mean, Cheryl's had the only golf cart vehicle accident in the town, right, Cheryl? You're here.
Yeah, coming to the board meeting a half hour early, 45 minutes late.
That's enough. We had enough discussion on that. Sorry, I didn't want to point you out.
Oh,
Cheryl.
I don't care.
I know you
It's
know.
built up now. That was what, like a couple of years after the golf carts were.
Okay.
Boy, that flag was really good that day.
Anything else, Josh? I'm sorry, I had it written down and I skipped over it.
No,
Apologize for it. Okay. Now, can we have a motion for adjournment?
I will make that motion.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Trustee Letzker. Any further discussions? With there being none, Trustee Morris, Trustee Hagan,
Aye.
Trustee Plumstein,
Aye.
Trustee
Aye.
Trustee Letzker. Motion carried. Thank you all for tonight.